France is losing Africa. Chaos erupts during Macron's Kenya visit. France's grip on Africa is collapsing, and what happened during Emmanuel Macron's visit to Nairobi may have exposed not just how serious the crisis has become. As Macron arrived in Kenya, protests erupted in the street. Angry youths flooded social media, and tensions inside the summit itself suddenly became impossible to ignore. Because this was just never about one visit. Across Africa, a new political awakening is growing, and global powers are beginning to realize the continent they once influenced so easily is rapidly changing. From Mali to Niger, Burkina Faso, and now Kenya, one question is spreading fast. Is Africa entering a new anti-Western era? The streets of Nairobi quickly became tense. Protesters marched through the city as anger over foreign influence, economic frustration, and political dissatisfaction exploded publicly once again. Many young Kenyans say African leaders have become too dependent on outside powers, while ordinary citizens continue struggling with unemployment, debt, inflation, and rising cost of living. But beneath the protest was something even deeper: a growing belief among many African youths that foreign governments still hold so much influence over Africa's political and economic future, and that frustration is no longer staying online.
Kenyan people. It's not Pan-Africanism of the Western Hemisphere are the responsible for the destruction of our mother planet. So they cannot tell us that coming to lecture us about tree planting, while every time they are destroying our planet. So we are going to the street today to demonstrate to the Kenyan people that there are some sane people in Kenya who are able to advance an anti-imperialist agenda.
Now comes the moment that completely changed the atmosphere inside the summit.
And our beaches are dirty. So then...
Already? You're not waiting your turn.
I will make order. Excuse me, everybody. Hey. I'm sorry, guys. But it's impossible to speak about culture, to have people like that super inspired coming here, making a speech with such a noise. So this is a total lack of respect. So I suggest, if you want to have bilaterals or speak about somebody else, something else, you have bilateral rooms or you go outside. If you want to stay here, we listen to the people. And we play in the same game. Okay? Thank you.
Like we were in a concerts. Hence the clubs, Your Excellency, in the US or made in China. And when you speak about artificial intelligence, okay, a lot of us, Mariam, you can also join in, please. Thank you.
For many people watching online, this was more than just crowd control. The moment quickly went viral because it symbolized something larger now happening across Africa: growing public resistance, rising frustration, and an increasingly uncomfortable relationship between Western leaders and African youths. And suddenly, Kenya became part of such a bigger geographical conversation. For years, many Africans believe colonization has ended politically. But a new generation now argues that foreign influence never truly disappeared. Instead, they believed it evolved through military partnership, economic dependency, debt system, multinational resource control, and political influence. Many young Africans now see part of the continent as still trapped inside modern form of external control. Whether fully accurate or not, that perception is spreading rapidly, and perception in politics can become reality. What makes Kenya important is that it was never traditionally seen as part of the anti-France political wave growing in part of Africa. Countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso were often portrayed internationally as an unstable military government turning away from France. But Kenya is different. Kenya has long been viewed as one of the West's closest democratic and economic ally in East Africa, which is exactly why this tension are now attracting global attention. But the deeper battle happening across Africa today is not just military or economic, it is psychological. Global powers are now competing to shape African public opinion itself. France, the United States, China, Russia, Turkey, and Gulf powers are all fighting for influence across the continent. But for Africa's youngest generation, the debate is increasingly becoming about sovereignty, not symbolic sovereignty, real sovereignty, control over policy, control over security, control over Africa's future. Through social media platforms, young Africans are now comparing foreign military deals, mining contracts, and economic agreements across countries in real time. And once population begins comparing pattern, trust can collapse very quickly. What started as economic frustration is now evolving into something far more dangerous for political elites, a cross-border political awakening, because from West Africa to East Africa, many young Africans increasingly believe their countries are rich, but their people remain poor while foreign powers and local elites continue benefiting. And perhaps the biggest warning sign for global powers is this: this movement has no single leader, no single party, no single ideology, no central organization. It spreads digitally, economically, culturally, which makes it unpredictable, but also historic. What most people are missing in this entire situation is that Africa is no longer just dealing with political protest. It is dealing with a competition for influence in a completely new form, because today influence is no longer controlled only through armies or president. It is controlled through system of finance, system of energy, system of education, systems of security operations, and most importantly, systems of dependency. And this is where the situation around Emmanuel Macron and Kenya became even more important. Because Kenya is not just another protesting nation, Kenya sits at the center of the East African financial and diplomatic structure, which means any political tension there is never just local, it echoes across the region. But here is the question almost no one is asking: if Africa is truly becoming independent, why does almost every major African economy still depends heavily on external funding system, trade agreements, and security partnership? And if those systems were suddenly removed tomorrow, what could actually happen? This is why the debate is becoming so intense online. Because one side argue Africa is finally breaking free, while the other side argue Africa is simply shifting influence from one global power to another without achieving full independence. And in between those two narratives is a generation trying to figure out what real sovereignty actually looks like in practice. What makes this moment different from past decades is that the argument is no longer happening only in parliamentary buildings or diplomatic offices. It is happening online. And for the first time, millions of young Africans are seeing the same geographical arguments at the same time. That has never happened before in Africa's modern history. And that is why events like protests during Macron's visit don't stay isolated. They become symbols of frustration, symbols of resistance, symbols of changing political identity. Whether leaders agree with this or not, the emotional direction of the youth is already shifting. And once that shift becomes generational, it rarely goes backward. So the real story is not just what happened in Kenya, the real story is what Kenya represents. A continent-wide question that is still unanswered: who truly controls Africa's future? Africa is entering a new political era, and the world can already feel the shift. What happened during Macron's visit to Kenya was not just another protest. It exposed the deeper battle now unfolding across the continent, a battle over sovereignty, influence, identity, and who will shape Africa's future in the decades ahead. The real question now is no longer whether Africa is changing. The real question is who will control what comes next. Will African governments listen to the anger rising from the streets? Will foreign powers adapt to the new reality? Or is Africa heading towards even larger geographical confrontation in the years ahead? One thing is certain: this story is far from over. If you enjoyed this analysis, please kindly subscribe to our channel and turn on notification bell so that whenever we drop an update, you'll be notified. And don't forget to like this video, comment, and share. Thank you for always watching. Stay calm, stay safe, and stay updated.